Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. My name is Jessica. I'm your host. You can follow me on Twitter at Jacinio Tweets and at She Knows Arsenal. Welcome, guys. How's everybody doing? Let me know in the chat box how you guys are feeling today on this. What is today? What is even today? Is it Wednesday or is it Thursday? I think it's Thursday. I am losing track of the days. Yeah, Thursday. How are you guys feeling on this Thursday evening? Let me know. So welcome to another daily download. We're going to be going through the latest Arsenal news and transfer news. But, it's a day before the transfer window, and it feels as though, the media cycle is just recycling kind of like the same things over and over and over again. And so until tomorrow, not even tomorrow, but like I would imagine new news would come out probably next week, the end of this week and the beginning of next week, because there'll probably be new things to talk about because you can actually start to make some moves and some dominoes will fall. So I do think they've been kind of just recycling the same things and then adding little tidbits, some old news to try to zhuzh up something. And so, yeah, we don't really know anything newer than like, there's nothing new to really add to what we've already been talking about. There's been some like little updates, so we'll go over those first. But ultimately, in this show, what I want to do is kind of talk about the, Scamacca versus Jesus. So a lot of Arsenal fans are kind of debating this on socials, and I thought, I wonder how you guys feel about it because there's this idea that we need to be going after a tall, fast, strong, physical center forward because Manchester City and Liverpool are doing it and they're kind of setting trends. Like they're kind of the trendsetters when it comes to what the Premier League is, what's successful in the Premier League. So do Arsenal need to follow suit and make sure that they have that type of striker as well? Is the false nine, is it dead? Are we behind the times, by bringing in a Gabriel Jesus, or do we just need to get a better version of Lacazette because that's what kind of worked for us? In that period of time where we played really well, we played with Lacazette, and until he fell off of a cliff, nobody was really asking for that physical forward. It wasn't really until later on in the season where people started really like, okay, we need somebody where if we hoof it into the box, we need somebody there. So we're gonna have like a discussion around that as well. Obviously, I'll kind of go through what the most recent news is in regards to Scamacca and Gabriel Jesus. And then we'll kind of have just a more open discussion about how you guys feel around what is the best option for Arsenal moving forward. So there's about 50 of you guys in here like the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's see what you guys are saying. Jasper says, Team Jesus, reveal yourselves. Rancid says, I want both. Tawanda says, good evening. Zach 10 says, both would be nice. I can't lie. Let's see. Lynn Simpson says, good evening, Jess. Good evening to you as well. Nashville says, the Scamacca link is a scam. You guys know I just basically call him the scam all the time. John Doe says, ESR would compete with Odegaard in the 8. Lucas says, we are no longer linked with wingers. Maybe it's both. So, yeah, we can have all of those conversations because I know we're going to bring in 2 forwards, I hope. That's my hope, is that we're going to bring in 2 forwards because we're going to lose Pepe, Lacazette is already gone, and Aubameyang is gone. So that's a lot of like senior forward energy that's left the club. And I know that maybe they didn't perform that well, this season respectively, but we still need to bring in those personalities from the outside. We don't have those options within the club. So, Arsenal can go one of 2 ways. Like they could bring in a big, tall, strong forward and Gabriel Jesus, that can play across the front 3, or they can stick with Gabriel Jesus as the number 9 and bring in a wide forward. So there's a couple of different things that can happen. I just wonder, with the investing into Eddie and Kedia, whether or not that just kind of puts an end to the idea that we would get 2 forwards that can play central. But let's just start off with a little bit of housekeeping in terms of the news. So this is coming from Lakeith. Arsenal will be offering Saliba a new contract. I don't think any of us were like confused about that, but L'Équipe is saying that. And, this is something that definitely needs to get done. I wonder if he signs a new deal. So here's my only thing about the whole Saliba coming back thing. Of course, I do think him saying that he wants to come back or he will be coming back, and Arteta also stating the same, is a good first step. But until this contract is signed or an extension is signed, I think we're in a precarious scenario because with Saliba, you can't allow him to go for free. And so him and his agent have a lot of power, I think, in terms of what's going to happen with him in the next 6 to 12 months. But equally, I'm thinking, behind the scenes, will Arsenal kind of say, we'll let you go where you want to go, but you need to sign a new contract? I think that would be something that I would look out for, because if he signs a new contract, um, and then we know that we can get maximum dollar for him, or we could loan him again to Marseille, which is kind of the rumor that's out there again, is that Marseille have not given up on the opportunity to re-sign Saliba on loan for next season. So I would just say until he signs on the dotted line and is wearing an Arsenal kit, I would just, wait a minute, because I can see Arsenal doing something like that. I saw a report, I think it was from GFFN, so they always kind of skew towards the negative side of a story when it comes to Arsenal, but basically saying that if Saliba doesn't get a lot of playing time in preseason, he will look to try to move away from Arsenal. And so, I would just say that Arsenal, I cannot see them promising him a starting position. We spent 50 million on Ben White. We gave him the number 4. Gabriel Magalhaes is going to get a new contract as well, and he's the starter on the left-hand side. So I don't see them offering him or saying, Saliba, yeah, for sure, you're going to start every single game. So if in preseason, he's not getting a lot of playing time, he could sign a new deal and then send him out on loan again to Marseille or something silly like that, and then try to sell him next summer. So I would just say that there's still some gray area here in the Saliba story, and I don't think it's going to be without any twists or turns. He wants to play. The World Cup is really important for him, and so I don't know, but the new contract is a good first step. We just have to see kind of how things unfold during preseason. Let's see. Lucas says it would be really weird if he resigns right away and he never, ever even played. Tawanda says Saliba needs to be in the team and competitive with Ben White for right central defense. I mean, that from an Arsenal perspective, that's what's best for us, right? Because that's I think a lot of times we think of it from what would be best for Arsenal, and then what's best for Arsenal is best for everybody. But for Saliba, it's not. If he wants to make that French national team, it's actually not his best interest to be at Arsenal, because he got into the team because he was starting at Marseille. If we start off next season with the same center backs and he's only getting cup fixtures, or he's not really getting that playing time, he's not going to be happy. There's too much competition for the French national team for him to be kind of playing very limited minutes. Again, we talked about this the other day, that Konate is not even making the side, and he's gotten quite a bit of playing time and has done well. So, it's not really in Saliba's best interest to be at Arsenal if he's not going to get the playing time that's going to allow him to get into that French national team. That's not to say that he won't get it and he won't push for it, but I just feel like there's something else here, that another twist that could be there. So, when he did his interview, I mean, he was basically stating the obvious. Like, he didn't Lukaku us, right? Which was a good thing. But he basically just said, I belong to Arsenal and I'll go back for preseason, which is, it's not a choice. It's what has to happen, because there's nothing else that can happen, if that makes sense. So it's in his best interest to make sure he's somewhere where he's going to get the playing time. that's pretty much what it is, right? So we'll see what happens with it. But I just think there's just something here that just feels like he could sign a new deal and then go back out on loan to Marseille, or we might sell him next summer or something like that. I don't know. Because is the playing time, is it really there? Is it really there? I don't know. Lynn says Arteta could bring in a tall, wide player who can rotate with Jesus to mix up the system a little so we're not so predictable. Typically, Arsenal says, well, wait for preseason. He will be better than Ben White, that's for sure. He's been suspect this season. My opinion, he will be playing with either Gabriel or White. I do feel like there's this assumption that Saliba's just going to walk straight into the starting lineup. I'm not sure. First of all, Ben White and Gabriel are both Arteta signings. Saliba is not. So I think that's also a little bit of why he hasn't been really. Look at what's happened with all the other signings that haven't been Arteta signings. Let me just put that out there. But the idea that like Saliba just walks straight back into this team, I think is based on the fact that anybody that's not starting for Arsenal, the person that's not there is always the answer. So, and I don't think a lot of Arsenal fans actually watch Saliba on a regular basis. I'm not saying that's you, typically Arsenal, but there's a lot of Arsenal fans that don't really watch Saliba on a regular basis. And he's not perfect. Neither is Ben White. He's going to need time to adapt to the Premier League. He's probably going to be just fine. But the idea that he's going to be the starter and the other two are going to have to just figure out who's going to give up their spot for Saliba, I don't think it's going to go like that. Keenan says letting Saliba go seems absolutely insane. He's going to be a $70 to $80 million player, 80 million pound player in a year or two. Offer Saliba the starting role if that's what it takes. White can be our rotation player. That's just not. That's just not how it goes. Like, it's not how it goes. Like, if the club felt that way about Saliba, they would not have bought Ben White and he would have been in the team last season, so they didn't have to send him out on loan again. So the idea that because he's going to be this star, which clearly the club was not sold on him being that star, they've sent him out on loan a couple of times. So the idea that they're going to sit White on the bench when Ben White was an Arteta signing doesn't feel like that's what's going to happen. Saida says, although Saliba said he's going to return to us, for me, it all depends on how Arteta uses him. I'm still not convinced about everything until preseason begins. That's where I kind of am as well. Like, I think it's a positive first step. But, if we get into preseason and Arteta's like, okay, I'm going to continue on with my other two, and Saliba, is kind of like an afterthought, then we'll have issues still. I think he needs to feel important in this team. Hakum says Saliba is better than White. I'm not sure that I can say that with real confidence until I see him play in the Premier League against Premier League opposition. Lynn says we cannot be blackmailed into Saliba's scenario because he was sent out on loan, and some of our fans have blamed Arteta for this. We cannot be blackmailed into the Saliba scenario. I just think Saliba's in a really decent position. He's within 2 years left of his deal. Arteta has to give him a new contract, or else he could potentially leave for free. So that's really good leverage for Saliba to get kind of what he wants. So we'll see what happens with that. Keenan says White is never going to start for England. Therefore, he's going to have less potential than Saliba over the long term. Saliba was a player of the season in League One. He is already better than Ben White. I just don't really see it. I see where he could be, but I would just want to see him play in the Premier League before. We know Ligue 1 is very, very weak, so I think we want Saliba to stay so bad that we'll kind of just convince ourselves of certain things. And I'm just like, maybe he is better than Ben White, and that's opinion, and that's what football's all about. But the idea that because we think that Saliba might be better, that means Arteta is going to start him and he's just going to go straight into the first team when Ben White has played almost every single game for Arteta. we've spent 50 million on him, and that's an Arteta signing. I think those things are important. Saliba was not signed by Arteta. Ben White was. So again, I think we just hold your horses. Just hold your horses. Saida says Saliba definitely has the highest ceiling, but watching him for France, I still saw mistakes, which is understandable because he's still young. But to say he's better than White right now is not true. But what's interesting about Saliba and the mistakes that he made, which are normal, which I think everybody makes mistakes, is that I saw Arsenal fans coming to his defense where other central defenders in our team, like Gabriel and Ben White, when they've made mistakes, they've gotten killed. And I think that this is just the reality, is that Saliba is somewhat of a cult hero for Arsenal. He has a little bit of a put on a pedestal type of thing. So Arsenal fans will be a lot more nice about his mistakes than the other team, the other team players on the team. Saliba also makes mistakes and he's not perfect, but everything about what Ben White has done this past season has been highlighted because of Saliba's status in the fan base. So again, I feel like I would prefer to see Saliba actually play for Arsenal against Premier League opposition before I just say that I think he's way better than Ben White. And the idea that, like, because Ben White wouldn't start for England and Saliba is a member of the French national team means something. Like, we don't actually know what's going to happen with Saliba. Like, he's not a starter for the French national team either. Like, he is a prospect that they brought in. Like, anything can happen from here on out. I think there's just too much projections so far. Like, you have to see him play with us first. And I'm going to keep it real. Like, there's a lot of people that act like they didn't see Saliba play for us at all. He has played for us. He played in a preseason match against Milton Keynes and he was ass. So Saliba is a young player. Hold your horses. Diallo says, Jess, your skepticism on Saliba's new contract is warranted, but also he's still very young, and right now he's on an infant contract. Triple his wages and he signs, especially if he backs himself. I think that's really a really, really good point, is that the money could help. So if we'd like triple the wages and put him on a decent package, then he may stay. And because whatever Marseille could offer him, like, we could offer him significantly more. And if he backs himself and thinks that he's better than Ben White and Gabriel, then he'll come in and try to work for it. But I've always had apprehensions around whether or not Saliba actually wanted to fight for his position at Arsenal, and whether or not he just wanted to be somewhere that kind of gives him that kind of like clear path. So let's see what happens. But I just want to just wait a little bit more for two things. Before I start saying that Saliba's better than certain players in our team, I want to wait until I actually see him play for Arsenal against Premier League opposition, because I have watched Saliba and he does make mistakes. And two, before I just think that he's going to be a part of this team long term, because the deal needs to be signed, and we also need to make sure that Arteta actually really rates him and wants him in his team. So yeah, that's it. That's it for that. Okay, so really quickly, Akanji wants to come to Arsenal, but him being right-footed makes the deal unlikely. We talked about this yesterday. I do think that I would look at a deal for Akanji at like 10 to 12 million, like really drive the price down at the end of the window. If he really wants to come and nobody else is interested and he's within 1 year left of his deal at Dortmund, I would bring him in. But Arteta's very consistent on wanting left footers on the left side and right footers on the right side. So if that makes the Akanji deal unlikely, then fair enough. But I still think I think it would be interesting to look at a left-sided center back this summer to make sure that we have two on each side, and really bolster that defense so that we don't have to see the likes of Holding come in. That would be something that I would be looking at as like not a priority, but something like towards the end of the window. But the Akanji deal doesn't look like it'll happen because he's not left-footed. He can comfortably use both feet, but Arteta's pretty like know about that whole like right footers on the left side. So that doesn't look like it'll come to fruition, but I just wanted to mention that. And watching Tielemans yesterday for Belgium against Poland, I thought he did a really good job. He was good, like in terms of making sure that like players didn't get in behind him. He wasn't getting exposed on the defensive end. He played in a double pivot next to Witzel, which I thought was interesting because a lot of Arsenal fans are like, how can he possibly play in a double pivot? It's international football, so take it with a grain of salt. But nominally, he can play in a double pivot. And I thought he was okay. Like he was pretty good. So yeah, watching him, I was like, okay, cool. Like you still need to like put the McDonald's down, but I thought he was pretty good. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that as well. I did see the Trossard. I was like, is Trossard good? And I do think he is. I do think he's good, you know? So I thought that was interesting. That he looked really good. He might have like another really good season at Brighton and then go to a bigger team after that. But I thought Trossard was really good. Yesterday. He looked great. But I thought Tielemans played really well. He needs to firm up, but he's slow. Like he is slow. So he's not that athletic, Basuma type. We've already kind of talked about that. But yeah, he looked pretty good. And so yeah. Diallo says Arteta has shown that if a player plays well, they keep their spot. We saw it with Nuno and Eddie. If Saliba comes in and performs, no reason why I wouldn't keep his spot. It's all about competition. No, I think I hear that. I do. I just think this is a very center backs are different than players on the exterior and fullbacks. You usually want to keep your center back pairing together, and center back and central midfield has been for our Arteta positions where we haven't seen as much rotation as in other positions, but there has been some. So we'll see what happens with all of that. Like I'm just saying, I just want to wait. Like, I don't want to get too like caught up in the Saliba's going to be here and then he signs a new deal and we send him off somewhere because he's not getting a lot of playing time. So yeah, I thought Tielemans did all right. Hakum says, I feel like Tielemans is just a slightly more technical Xhaka. He looks to have a weight problem. Don't want any more snails in the midfield. A slightly more technical Xhaka, I think, is Yuri Tielemans on the ball is significantly better than Granit Xhaka. Yeah, they can both switch the ball and all that kind of stuff, but Tielemans can do it with both feet, where Xhaka is heavily left-footed, which limits us. And in the final third, he's a lot more comfortable than Granit Xhaka. So all those times that Granit Xhaka was getting into the box last season and he wasn't able to make anything happen, he wasn't able to find the pass, he couldn't get his feet sorted. Tielemans does that so much better than him. So the idea that he's just slightly more technical than Granit Xhaka, I think, is underplaying his abilities. And Xhaka is also 30, almost 30 years old. Tielemans is like 24 and 25. So if Tielemans is just slightly better than him, but 5 years younger, then I do think that you just have to look at it as an upgrade anyway. They're nowhere near in the same like lifetime of their careers. Like Tielemans is way younger than him. So I don't think it's slightly more technical. I think he's a better technical player than Granit Xhaka, full stop. And he just doesn't have the physical qualities that people want. They want the Basumas. They want players that are leggy. And because I think we're traumatized by the Crystal Palace game and Newcastle game and Brighton game where we got ran over. I totally get that. But Tielemans walks into our midfield and is significantly better than Granit Xhaka on the ball. Osman says, here's the thing, Jess, football's in top striker famine, but the next gen will bring it back. In the interim, we prioritize physical stature. Scamacca, the left winger, has to be quality though. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. There's 130 of you guys in here, so like the video and subscribe to the channel. The main thing I kind of want to talk about today is the Scamacca. I'm saying Scamacca. It's probably pronounced a different way, but just bear with me. Versus Gabriel Jesus whole debate. I mean, I'm definitely of the idea that I think Gabriel Jesus is the option that we should take if we have to choose something. Because I'm not sure that I believe that Scamacca is going to be the type of player that people think he is. He's like the compilation hype signing. And Arsenal fans, we tend to get a little bit wrapped up into that, I think. Like, it's he has the tattoos and he's tall and he looks good on compilations because he has the good ball striking ability and all this kind of stuff. And the name sounds cool. And he's from a different league, so it's fancy and it's foreign. It's great. But oops, I think bringing in talent in league is more of a sure thing than outside of the league. That's my take on just Scamacca versus Jesus in general. I like the sure thing versus the thing that could be great, but we're not sure because we don't know how it's going to translate. Now, in terms of the profile situation, like would I prefer a tall, fast striker over like a false nine? I think in general, we need both. We need both. Like Arsenal should not be choosing. We should be able to get both. But if I had to choose, I would say that, I would prefer the tall, fast striker if I'm just choosing based on my preference. My preference would be to have somebody that can hold the ball up and could play a little bit, but ultimately, when you get the crosses in the box, they can head it in. But do I think that the only way that you can have physicality in the box is to have somebody tall? No, I don't. I do think you can have shorter strikers and it's fine as long as they make the right runs and they want it. I think ultimately a lot of that physicality in the box has to do with, do you actually want to get the ball? Um, so you can kind of cut corners with shorter strikers as long as they're aggressive, athletic, and want to actually get on the end of crosses. So, you know, I think Scamacca, I do think he's a good player, but I don't know. Like if I was gonna go after the tall physical striker, I would just say go after Osimhen because I'm more sure about the talent, I think. But Scamacca is like good as well. Like I don't know. I want to know what you guys think because the profile to me is think we need both. I think we need somebody that if the false nine thing isn't working and we get stuck and we start to have to kick balls into the box, then we will need that striker. Or if we are playing against a Liverpool or a Man City and we're not going to have as much of the ball, do we want to have somebody that we can pop the ball out to that can hold it up for us and buy fouls and get us up the pitch? We've lacked an outlet when we haven't been able to dominate games, which is not very often. But when in the 5% of games when we can't dominate them, we haven't had a good outlet, and so it's hurt us. Away from home at Anfield, away from home at the Etihad really stand out to me as scenarios where that's happened. So, I do think we need both, but a lot of it for me comes down to, you know, is the talent certified? Like, do I know that this talent is when they get to the Arsenal, or is it going to be what I thought? Am I ordering Scamacca and am I going to get the compilation Scamacca or am I going to get the Wish version? That's what I'm afraid of because I'm not 100% sold that the talent is as good as it looks like it does on compilations. That's where I am with the Scamacca thing. So, but I know what I'm going to get from Gabriel Jesus. I know for sure exactly what I'm going to get. Is there going to be a limit there in terms of the physicality in the box? Maybe. But I've also seen Gabriel Jesus get on the end of headers and stuff like that. So I'm not sure that we really lose out on that part. But if you're somebody that is 100% sure that Scamacca or a profile like that is what we should be going after, let me know in the chat box why. Why do we have to have this striker? And because we are a cutback team. We are not a hoof it into the box team. We're not. We are a get to the end line, cross, like cut back and tap it in type of team. Do you need that tall striker to do that? it's a 5%, like maybe 10% max of times where we need to hoof it into the box and get on the end of crosses. So is it worth it to go after that striker and not get the other one because of the 10%? So yeah. Karumi says Scamacca, who him Lord. Okay. Nashville says Jesus is not just a willing presser, but an effective presser. I mean, there is that aspect of things with Jesus that you get the pressing and him and like let's say we don't even get a left wing, but having like him and Gabriel Martinelli pressing would be amazing, in terms of the pressing and stuff like that. So I do think that Jesus has other qualities that people don't think about because we're just thinking about we need that fancy, big, tall, like the striker has to be big and tall and strong. And that's like an old school way of thinking of things. But equally, football is in cycles, and you see Manchester City and Liverpool are going after the tall striker. So are we going to get left behind? Monty97 says, we all know that what Jesus brings, but that's not enough. We need to bring in Scamacca as a plan B. Karumi says Jesus is a perfect fit. He can play along the front line. Saida says, I like the Scamacca profile because Mikel Arteta has shown not to have a good plan B. So this would diversify our options. Also, Scamacca doesn't need to have a ridiculous price like the others in the market. I mean, I think I agree. Like we don't have a plan B, and it would be nice to have some like a bigger, tall, physical striker to bring in to do something different. So I do like agree with that 110%. I'm just not sure that Arsenal are going to bring in two strikers. Like it would be because once they signed Eddie Nketiah, I thought it was like a sure thing that we wouldn't. But what I will say is that I think if Arsenal are serious, they need two forwards, and it wouldn't be that bad. Like because the left wing options that we can actually get are like Cody Gakpo. You could look at somebody like a Dan Juma, but Gabriel Jesus on the left is probably better than those two still because he can play across the front line. So maybe bringing in the center forward like this actually would be a good play because Gabriel Jesus can play across the front line and you still have Martinelli. But there's nobody in our team right now that can play center forward like Scamacca can. So maybe that is what Arsenal are looking to do. That would be so ambitious to try to bring in Scamacca and Jesus in the same window. It wouldn't necessarily cost that much more in terms of like if we were to bring in a left winger and Gabriel Jesus, like what would be the difference? But that would just be so ambitious, and it would also call into question why we have Nketiah here. So yeah, I'm just not sure. I think the Nketiah thing is what's throwing me off. Ray says, I mentioned Mitrovic, Fulham, to my mate. He chased me down the road wanting to kill me. Is it crazy to throw in Mitrovic into the mix? He just doesn't score in the Premier League. I think that's the issue with Mitrovic is that he's been in the Premier League a couple of times and his goals in the championship don't necessarily translate. And so I would say a no to Mitrovic. Like if I had to choose somebody that's a little bit closer to home, I would say I would prefer to even go after like a Dominic Calvert-Lewin over a Mitrovic because that guy just doesn't score in the Premier League at all, But I hear what you're saying. Let's see. Anike says, while I like Scamacca's profile, I don't want us to not have any experience in our front line. Well, if we're talking about bringing in because I personally feel like where Arsenal are at right now is either the left winger that we would bring in if we didn't bring in a center forward would end up being young anyway. Because like we've been linked a lot to Cody Gakpo, and he's 23, but he's coming from a league where the adaptation is going to be brutal for him because the Dutch league is so nowhere near the Premier League. So would you rather bring in an inexperienced Cody Gakpo or would you rather bring in an inexperienced Scamacca? And you have the same kind of risk in terms of adaptability to the Premier League, but maybe one profile is because I'm not 100% sure that Cody Gakpo is light years ahead of Martinelli. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not actually sure of that. But I think Scamacca can do something that Nketiah can't do. So if I'm going to bring in somebody experienced and I have to choose if it's going to be off of the left wing or in center forward, I think I might choose center forward because you still have Gabriel Jesus. So yeah, but I'm just they could be going after both. She Knows Football says this is really bad. We were talking about Scamacca instead of Gnabry or Osimhen. No. Well, Gnabry, I don't think was ever a real thing. Like, I really don't think it's a real thing. I think he's either trying to force Bayern to do something or force Bayern to do something. Like, I could see him staying and going for free next summer. There's no reason for him to move right now, really, to be honest. Osimhen, the issue with Osimhen is that if you go after Osimhen, then you can't get Gabriel Jesus, and you need both. You know, we need both. And I get that there's some people that are like, well, Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus are similar. They're actually not similar at all in any way. They're just both shorter, but they're not the same at all. So you'll still be missing that profile that you need, you know? So for me, it's like Osimhen, if you're going to have to spend over 100, like almost 120 million on him, and you can't get the Gabriel Jesus signing as well, then for me, it's not worth it because we still need both. But if you go after Scamacca, you can do both. And yeah, maybe Scamacca's ceiling is not as high as Osimhen, but you just need somebody who, in those 10% of games where we can't seem to get, you know, maybe we're trying to break down a low block and it's not working, or, you know, we're playing against Liverpool and we don't have a lot of the ball. We have somebody that could do something different, that can give us a different option. So does that different option have to cost 120 million? I'm not sure it does. You know, so when you talk about like spreading the resources out, I do think I would prefer the Scamacca plus Jesus versus the Osimhen blowout plus Nketiah. You know, D. Cunningham says, aren't we really bringing in 2 strikers and 2 midfielders and 1 defender? I don't know. I mean, that's pretty much what it feels like, you know, because even the forwards that we've been linked to have been able to play center forward. So I do think Arsenal want to get a tall forward in there. It depends on if it's going to be off of the left or through the center. And maybe they looked at it and said, well, we could get Cody Gakpo, and he can nominally play through the middle, but we could also go get Scamacca, and then we know we have like everything kind of covered. You know, so I think it's 2 forwards, 1 midfielder, and 1 defender, or maybe 2 defenders. I think it's 1 midfielder full stop. Like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I'm guessing, you guys. I'm out here guessing, like, because I think like you bring Zinchenko, you could technically say it's a defender as well. So I don't know. Let's see. Olivier says Scamacca will free Saka and Martinelli. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading. Monty97 says, is bringing in 2 strikers and 1 midfielder going to be enough? I think that's all we're going to do. It's never enough. Like, it's never enough. But I think, like, if the window, let's say the window was Scamacca, Jesus, Tielemans, and Zinchenko, I'd bite your hand off for it. I would, because with Jesus, you're covering several positions, and with Zinchenko, you'd be covering several positions as well. Is it enough? No, we still probably need a right back. We probably still need another center back. We probably need another like CDM. But in terms of being able to cover as many positions as possible with more quality, I do think I would bite your hand off for it. But I do think we'll bring in more than just the 2 forwards in the midfielder. We will bring in some sort of full back cover as well. Javishnu says, for Scamacca, if we get him, He will be a different profile and may cause defenders to change how they play against us. Jesus is also needed because he is prem proven and can play anywhere in the front. I agree. I agree with that because defenders, like if we went to Anfield with Scamacca, I don't think we'd be swallowed up because I think when you go away to Anfield, and even when they came to us, physically, they were just massive. They were massive, massive players. Um, and so I think that would give us something different. And then Matip and Van Dijk, or Van Dijk and Konate, are not going to have just a day off, because the reason why, like Manchester City, even though they're not a big team, they can play with Liverpool because the technical quality is up there. But I think, when you're playing against the best of the best and our technical quality is not as up there as a Man City, then you need physicality to come in to kind of bridge the gap a little bit. And so that's something that Scamacca can do. And then you still have Jesus, who has the Premier League experience, like you said. And I'm just thinking in the back of my mind that there is going to be a change in terms of the false nine will still work, but when the best teams are looking at bringing in tall, leggy, fast forwards, you probably need to pay attention. And so other teams may not do it right now. Like maybe Chelsea doesn't do it. Manchester United may not do it this summer. But if we can do it this summer, we might get ahead of them in terms of having that profile as well. So we'll see. We'll see. Kurumi says, Jess, you seem to rate Scamacca. The thing is like, I can always look at a player and see why the hype is there. Like, I do think he's a good player. My only apprehension would be if we got him and we didn't get Jesus and he was the striker signing, am I going to get the guy that I'm looking at on compilations playing in Italy, or am I going to get the Wish version? Am I going to get somebody that's going to struggle in the Premier League? And maybe it's just an adaptation, but Arsenal need to hit the ground running. That's the issue, is that the fixtures are going to come out in 7 days or so. And like, let's be real. Like, we're not going to get easy games off the front, in the front. Like, we never do. It's always hard. Like the last 2 seasons, I think we've played some of the top teams in the first 3 games. So assuming that, again, Arsenal need to be ready to go. So if you have somebody that's kind of needs adaptation time, I think that's the wrong way to go for where Arsenal is right now. You know what I mean? So it's not about whether or not I rate him. I do think he's a good player. It's just, is he as good as we think he is? Because he's playing in another league. And I mean, he's never really scored more than like 15 goals as well. So let's not act like the guy is like, he's not a Aubameyang. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he still needs time to cook. And how long is it going to take him to adapt where we know that Jesus is going to hit the ground running? That's really the question, Christopher says Serie A is risky. Even some fans from the league don't rate it particularly highly. Giroud leads the line for AC Milan, sums it up. Not to say there's no quality there, just got to be careful. I do think like that's kind of what it is. It's like, I just want us to be careful. And like, if the signings that we get are not as exciting because they're not like foreign and, they don't have the hype behind them, but we know what we're going to get. I almost feel like that's better than going after these unknowns that sound good. The Onyx Lens says, I like playing the hard teams early. Last season's fixture list was set up perfect for us. If we get top teams early and are able to mock a point or 2, that's ideal. If not, we still have all year. Yeah, for me, it's just about like, it's not just about the Man City game and the Liverpool game that came, I'm sorry, the Chelsea game that came really early. Those I would expect us to do a lot better in, and maybe, like you said, nick a point. But it's the Brentford game as well, where we weren't ready to go. So we lost 3 points. And so, having players that are coming from other leagues that aren't quite adapted to the Premier League could be the difference again between, 4th and 5th and 6th. So, yeah, I think Scamacca could be so good. But right now he's bordering on somewhat of a unknown for me. And so if I have to choose, I want to go for the thing that I know is going to work. even though I still want that Scamacca profile. Like, I want it all. And I think Arsenal should get both. Like, if we're serious, we'd go get both. The idea that we should just get Jesus and Tielemans and then wait and see, like, that's bullshit. Like, and I get that, oh, well, we finished in Europa League, so the window has to change. Well, then you should have pushed for Champions League a little bit harder, shouldn't you have? You know, I expect to have a Champions League level window, even though we finished outside of it, because we need a Champions League level team to get into it this next season. So a Champions League level team would go get both. Come on. Tony says the Italian market is going to be very different than most of the rest of Europe, with Italy out of the World Cup. Yo-Yo says skill set matters most, jigsaw pieces to a puzzle. Olivier says, how about Lewandowski? I don't think he would want Arsenal, but he should be on the list. I think that key little point of I don't think he would is all that we need to talk about when it comes to him. Yeah. So, oh, and yes. Okay, so I hear what you guys are saying. It's like, well, the other day you were saying he was a scam, and today we're talking about it. It's more about the profile and why Arsenal fans feel so strongly about having the big, tall, fast forward over the false 9-1. Not necessarily, we're not really having a deep conversation around the validity of the link, because that's where I really kind of stand firm on the Scamacca thing. I still am not convinced that he's going to leave Italy, but the more important conversation is about why Arsenal fans feel so strongly about having that particular profile, because it's not just Scamacca. You could get that profile in somebody else. So that's more, the conversation that we're having, not so much the validity of the link. I still am not 100% sure that it's that valid, but I do think he's a good player. I still think it's like a smokescreen. And it would take like 50 million to bring him in. That's a lot. Are we going to spend 50 million on him and 50 million on Gabriel Jesus? That's a lot. Shouldn't be a lot, but it is for Arsenal, right? Tony says, yes, we should have a Champions League level window, especially since we've cleared out the Champions League level salaries. That's why I'm not doing all this stuff about, we're only going to be bringing in Gabriel Jesus and Tielemans and then wait and see who we're going to sell. Like, there has to be more money available. I know we're going to have to sell somebody in order to get somebody. Like, I get that that's always the reality of our windows, but the idea that we would only bring in 2 players and then we have to wait to see if we can sell Bellerin, Torreira, Pepe, and these guys to get anything else done, that's just not good enough. And would Scamacca, Gabriel Jesus, Tielemans, and Zinchenko be a Champions League level window? To me, it'd be damn close. It would be. The Onyx Lens says, I think we'll get a player that isn't on our radar for the wide forward spot. Just a hunch. A la Tamiyasu, Edu and Mikel have something up their sleeve, but Jesus and Tielemans is a must. Yeah, those are our priorities. And then everything else is kind of up in the air. And so it's not a long window, but we're at the beginning. And we know that like last summer, some of the links didn't come to a lot later. So I still think we have a ways to go. We never know what will come up. Spammers are so weird. Diallo says, Scamacca is using us to get a better deal in Italy, similar to Nabri and other pipe dream. Here's the thing, though. Like, if they don't come in for you, what do you do? Because, where is he at? They're saying they just bought a striker as well. So they must feel like they want to cash in on Scamacca, right? Look it up. I still do think that he wants to stay in Italy, and he's been tapped up. He has been tapped up by the bigger teams, and that's just what they do. Like they tap up all the talent to make sure that it stays in that league. But Sassuolo, they've signed Agustin Alvarez, which is another striker. So I think that they're prepping themselves potentially for Scamacca leaving. Now, we know how this kind of thing goes. It could go a couple of different ways. He could say, I don't really want to wait. And the club can kind of try to push him out to get that money. And he could end up leaving Italy. But I think more likely, as the window goes on and on and on and on and on, the bigger teams will find a creative solution to bring in Scamacca. But this is kind of what they do. They go ahead and they sign the person that they're going to replace the player with, and then they kind of go from there. And then as the window will progress, we'll see more and more links to the likes of Juventus and Inter. They'll become more and more interested, and the likes of like Arsenal and PSG, who have showed early interest, probably won't get him. So that's what I think will happen. But I think he'll leave Sassuolo. It's just a matter of from where. And like, I just am like, can Inter really do the Lukaku and Scamacca? Can they float that without moving on Lautaro Martinez? I don't know. Juventus just bought Vlahovic, and they were barely able to piece together the coin to do it. So yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting one because those are the two clubs that he seems to want to go to. Again, AC Milan also they're gonna sign Origi, or they've already signed Origi. They have Giroud, and they also have Ibrahimovic. A lot of the bigger teams already have that striker, a couple of strikers there. So his options are limited. It's just, and I think that's probably what we're waiting around for, is to see if he'd be willing to come, because at the end of the window, no move to an Italian team materializes. But them buying another striker just shows that they probably are getting ready to try to push him out, which is kind of what they do. Don't worry, you guys. I am getting the spammers. I'm getting them. Okay. There's nothing weirder than spammers, you guys. I don't get what they're doing. Yusuf says Sassuolo just signed a striker. Exactly. Let's see. Anike says, we deserve to have a tall clinical forward. I don't care who it is. Let's see. Olivier says, Scamacca fits better at Inter, but the Lukaku thing, I mean, that's pretty much, I think he needs somebody to go. Like, he needs somebody to leave. And Juventus, like, they're probably going to sign Morata on some cut price deal. So they'll have Morata and Vlahovic. So where's the room for him? And then you look at Inter, and it's like they look like they're going to go for Lukaku. And don't they have Eden Dzeko? And then they have Lautaro Martinez. So there's not a lot of space. And what's weird about it is that I feel like if I was a player who, I know I'm not under any sort of threat in terms of like not getting into the Italian national team right now, because there's no World Cup, and like I'm kind of there-ish in their ship-outs. It'll probably be another 2 seasons or so before one of those spots opens up at one of the big Italian clubs. So why not go somewhere else and get some experience somewhere else and just enjoy your football, make some money, at a club in the Premier League, and then just go back. Like, you're 22 years old. Like, you have plenty of time to be old and be in the Italian league. Do something different. Like, the way that they won't leave and are always just desperate to wait on those other clubs is like insane to me. There's more. Jesus. Okay. They just keep coming back. So when I see them, I'm getting rid of them, you guys. I'm sorry. Let's see. Matt G says, I can totally see this Scamacca links being another Guimaraes. After he signs for another club, we'll be told we were never in for him. Well, that's kind of what the club wants to do, to make it seem like we don't we're never in for anybody, and we never get rejected, right? Karumi says, I would buy Lukaku at Arsenal. Anike says, Lukaku got unfairly slated for his performance latter half of the season. After watching him, it's obvious his teammates never passed to him. He'd do better in a team set up for him. Yeah, he would do better, of course. Like, he would do better at another team. And so I think he's desperate to go back to Inter. I think that that's pretty clear. They want to do some sort of loan with an obligation to buy at like 60 something million, or an option. So we'll see how that unfolds, but that still leaves Scamacca in like a weird spot, doesn't it? But he may just wait around and wait for the opportunity. Joshua says, remember PSG wanted a Tiki? They desired a young striker, and they have Italian variety. It makes sense if you ask me. Fairs. So yeah, but we'll see what happens with the whole Scamacca thing. Again, I still feel like it's somewhat of a smokescreen / somebody that we've been interested in, and they're using our interest to get more drum up more interest from the Italian teams and get them to act. And then they also buy a new striker to say, like, we're ready, we're going to sell him. But I would like to see that tall physical striker come in, even if it's not Scamacca. But I also still want Jesus as the number one option. Yo-Yo says Newcastle or Spuds would be an option for the scam. Newcastle or Spuds. Yeah, I mean, they could possibly go for him as well. Onyx says, no sweat, Jess. I'll spray them with the spam spray. The spammers are crazy. Like, they just come in and, like, I know it's a bot or whatever, but it's like, what is your purpose? Like, I don't understand. Zaza says, Jess, do you think Jesus can improve his goal output? I am skeptical, because even at City he struggled, and they make way more service. I do think he can improve upon it, but would I ever expect him to be a 20+ goal a season striker? No. I think he's always going to kind of be in the 12 to 15 range. I think that's kind of where he's at. He's kind of like Ben White in a way. And the way I kind of describe Ben White is Gabriel is the better defender, but Ben White is the better footballer. And so you could probably put him in various positions and he'd do good. But as a defender, is he ever going to be the top defender there? Probably not. And I think Gabriel Jesus is the same thing. He's a better footballer than, Aubameyang, but Aubameyang is the better striker. So what we can expect from him is the ability to press, get on the end of some moves. He'll be better than Lacazette in terms of his finishing. But is he ever going to be 20 to 25 goals a season? Probably not. And that's probably why you need a goal-scoring left winger, or the complete 9 to accompany him as well. But what he does do is he lifts the technical level of the team. He has more experience, and we need better footballers in our team too. And he can play in multiple positions. So that's kind of where I am with the Gabriel Jesus thing. He's not, and that's what we're kind of used to at Arsenal as well. Like, we're used to having like that 9 that's going to score all those goals, the likes of Henry and Van Persie and Aubameyang. These guys, they scored a lot of goals. Ian Wright, lots and lots and lots of goals. So we're used to having that guy. And so Gabriel Jesus, he's not going to be that guy. He's going to lift the technical level, and he's going to be a better footballer, and he's going to help us get to the next level. But Arsenal at some point are going to have to buy that guy. And so whether or not it comes this summer, I'm not sure. But at some point, like, that striker will come, or that profile will come. If that makes sense. Jeremy H says, I think Nketiah is about to explode. I always forget about him. Like, I'm just gonna keep it real. I always forget about him. He is there. He is there, and I hope he gets better. But I do think that he's good, and he'll be a nice, like, backup striker. The Onyx Lens says Jesus will score more than Laka and do the things we praise Laka for. Even better, way better. It would be a top signing baller. Yeah, that's pretty much where I am with it. He's never going to be that Aubameyang like striker, but he's definitely going to do the things that Lacazette was doing a lot better. He'll score more than him. Tony says, would you prefer someone underperforming XG on a bad team or overperforming XG on a good team? Would I prefer someone underperforming XG on a bad team than overperforming XG? That's a tough question. Overperforming XG on a good team, I think. What kind of player is it though? Like, are they if you're underperforming your XG, that's no, underperforming on a bad team. That's what I'm going to go with, because overperforming your XG to me is a sign of maybe luck or a hot streak that could potentially run down. But sometimes if you overperform your XG, you're either a player on a good run that's not that good, that's maybe going to go down. So somebody like a Willick. Or you could be somebody like Son, that or Kane, they overperform their XG a lot, but that's because they're world class. And even like being in a bad position, they can make goals into nothing. Chances that are half chances for some strikers are full on chances for Son and Kane. So I think there's a big, gap between the two. But somebody who's underperforming their XG on a bad team, I think you could maybe make a better case for them just being in a bad team and needing to be in better positions and get better service from better teammates. But yeah, I'd rather have an overperforming in a bad team like that. I mean, that would be great, right? But like you wanted it to be hard, right? Keenan says Richarlison underperforming at Everton. Jesus could be overperforming at City. Yeah, I mean that's. I think the thing about Jesus though is that he's just a really good player, and so if you just kind of get your mind around the idea that he's probably going to be a 10 to 12 goal a season, no, like 12 to 15 goal a season striker, but he's going to up the levels for us and get us to the next level. Yeah, I think that's pretty much where we're at with that, with him. Richarlison is performing well in a bad team, I think. And so he would be a good punt for somebody that doesn't have to work out. He doesn't fit us, I don't think, Richarlison, in terms of his style of play, but maybe that's a good thing. Richarlison scores quite a bit of goals in a really bad team. So, yeah. Monty says Jesus could be 25, 30 goals season striker. He just hasn't had the opportunity to play every game as a number 9. I think he could be that player. Hashtag off-season questions. Like, I think I might literally spend some time actually really thinking about that, because I still think it's underperforming in a bad team. But I could be wrong. Karumi says Jesus is a baller. I agree. Yo-Yo says Richarlison could be molded into the 9 people want to see at the club, but Arteta isn't who people think he is based off Martinelli's development under him. Richarlison can be molded into the 9 people want to see at the club, but Arteta isn't who people think he is based off Martinelli's development under. So you're basically saying that his reluctancy to play Martinelli in the number 9 would also speak to maybe not seeing Richarlison as the number 9, right? I think it was kind of odd that we never saw Martinelli really play number 9 this season. I do think it's odd. I think that maybe does speak to how Arteta sees him. And Richarlison is not really he's similar to Martinelli, but not as skillful, and he's bigger, like a bigger, taller kind of player. But yeah, I don't know what Arteta wants for his center forward. I really don't, and I think we'll know more in the summer, but I don't know what he wants. But I do think how you could get that get to that conclusion from what you've said. Question from Saida says, I'm not saying I want this to happen, but I believe a player should be moved on if they don't want to be here. But do you think Bellerin would be a better backup than Cedric? No, I don't. I thought a lot of the same things about Bellerin that I thought about Cedric this season. I think Bellerin was a really good player because he had his speed, but once he lost that speed, he became very average. And so what he could do technically at the highest level wasn't good enough. So Cedric is just fine against the lower half of the Premier League and in cup games. He's just fine, especially if he's playing with a team that is mostly first choice. But when you get in the bigger games against the better opposition and the physicality comes into play and defending comes into play and being able to really affect the game in the final third, that's where they lack. There was a lot of hopeful crosses from Bellerin that weren't very good. Like, I'm just going to pop it into the box and see what happens. He was kind of a one-trick pony. He wasn't physically good enough. And I see a lot of the same things in Cedric. So I think it'd be pretty much like for like in that regard. I think Bellerin is just the same as Cedric. And I hate to say that because Bellerin's ceiling when he had the speed was definitely way better than Cedric's, but losing that speed just shows you that some players you can't trust that burst. You need to improve your all-around game because once it's gone, you're just not the same player. Nashville says Jesus and Tielemans or DCL and Zinchenko. What? Jesus and Tielemans, it's got to be for me. I'm pretty sold on both of those signings, the Jesus and Tielemans. I think, honestly, if you put all of that together, that would be a decent window. Jesus, Tielemans, DCL, and Zinchenko, because you kind of fill all the gaps. Yeah, so that would be a good one altogether. But if I had to choose Jesus and Tielemans, we need the technical quality of this team has got to go up. Let's see. Tony says, playing with FB Ref, Gabriel Jesus is top 10 XG per 90 and top 10 expected assists per 90 in the Premier League. Gabriel Jesus is a good player. Like, he just is. Like, sometimes when I see people, they're saying things like he's not that good. I think it speaks volumes that, like, Chelsea have been linked to Gabriel Jesus, and when he was just linked with us, he was just average. He wasn't that good, but as soon as he was with them, they were like, get him, get him, get him. He's a very good player. I think, we forget how far ahead Manchester City is to everybody else and that their team is on a different stratosphere. So even just being in that team and playing significant minutes shows you like what the level of those players actually are. And so, just because Gabriel Jesus doesn't start every game for Manchester City doesn't mean that he's not a good player, because they're in a different stratosphere. Beyond Zach Steffen and Ake, everybody else on Manchester City is a top player. And that includes Gabriel Jesus, who's only 25, by the way. So I think he's an excellent player. I think it could go one of two ways. He could either explode at a new club because he just needed to be the number one and just needed more time and to be like, feel like he was the number one, kind of number 9, and play all the minutes. Or he could be kind of what he is now. Those are the two like scenarios that I can see. Jay says, I think Gabriel Martinelli. Wait, which one? We have 2 Gabby M's, but I think you're talking about Martinelli. Has played central due to combative strength required, and he isn't ready, I think. It's fair. That is fair. Make sure you guys are liking the video. Tony says, Gabriel Jesus on versus forwards. 90 percentile on nutmeg, sign him up. I love that. Yo-Yo says, Gabriel Jesus starts ahead of ESR, Martinelli, and Eddie, so I'd welcome him, but I want more. I think that's that's a fair statement from Yo-Yo, that we need players that sit our young players on the bench. That's what I think. I think they need to be clear starters. There should be no questions. They walk straight into the team, and they're the best players in that team. And so I think Gabriel Jesus does that. but equally, we still need more to replace, because we Pepe, Aubameyang, and Lacazette. That's a lot to replace in terms of the starting kind of attacking positions. And if we're honest, let's be honest. Like Martinelli and ESR right now are good young players on the cusp of something, but they're not quite there yet. So they need somebody in front of them. So I agree. We need more than just Gabriel Jesus, but it's a good start. It's a good start. The Onyx Lens says scale of 1 to 10, Gabriel signing, same for Tielemans. I would say Gabriel Jesus is probably like an 8.5 signing for me, and Tielemans is probably a 7.5 signing for me. I think Tielemans is a little bit less exciting than Gabriel Jesus for obvious reasons. Gabriel Jesus is, he's up there, in terms of the players like that you could get for a team that's in Europa League. Tielemans would be making a step up to us. Gabriel Jesus would be making a semi-step down to us, So, and Tielemans, I have to see what the midfield looks like with him in it. So, yeah, 7.5 and 8.5. Not like slam dunking, but like that's pretty good. She Knows Football says, will we do transfer predictions? Absolutely. So the window's not quite open yet. And I was like, okay, I want to actually wait for the window to open. And what I want to do is do predictions for the window. What do we think is going to happen? And then also like preseason predictions. So who do we think is going to play? What young players could potentially break through? Who's going to be the loan signing that comes back and does a job, those types of things. So there'll be those types of shows coming as well. It's just right now, it's just more easing into the transfer window. So yeah. But definitely going to do transfer predictions. We did those last season and we got them so wrong. I think I said I knew for sure that we were going to get Madison or something. Like, I think I was very like, yeah, we're definitely getting Madison and we're going to get Basuma or something. And those didn't happen at all. And then obviously we didn't see like Tomiyasu happening. So that was a surprise. So yeah, we'll do those predictions for sure. Blaze says some Arsenal fans are weird. Gabriel Jesus is a better player than Richarlison, DCL, and Scamacca. He can improve Arsenal to another level if he were to come. Yeah, I do agree with that. Hakum says, does that include Saka? I think Saka's on a different level than Martinelli and ESR. Saka's, I don't look at him as a young player anymore. He's just a player. And so he needs star player wages and star player contract. And I think he retains his starting position next season. He's our player of the season twice over. So I think Saka is in a completely different category than ESR and Martinelli, who I think had different issues this season. Like ESR had a fitness issue, and I think during games he went missing, but he scored goals. Martinelli kind of had the opposite issue. Like he was always involved in games and did a lot of good things, but his finishing was off. Whereas I think Saka was more consistent, where he was involved in everything. He was involved in matches. He was very influential in everything that we did, and he had the end product with it. So I think Saka retains his starting position where the center forward and left wing should be open and probably occupied by more experienced or better players. That would be my take. Tony says Saka has adult strength. ESR and Nelly aren't physically at that level yet. Yeah, I do think that there's a little bit of that as well. Like Saka is almost like 6 foot tall now. He's grown quite a bit. Like you look at him when he was young. Look at him. Like I looked at this the other day and I was like, no. He is growing. It is. Like when he first got into the team, he was way smaller. And now he's way bigger now. I'm gonna find a picture of him. Yeah, this is a good one. Let me share this with you. Okay. Look at that. You see this picture? This is him like when I saw him, because I went to the Newcastle game where he nutmegged who is it? I forget what his name is, but he nutmegged somebody, and like that was like his coming out, like coming of age game. Like people started like really talking about Bukayo Saka. He doesn't look like this anymore. He does not look like this anymore. He's almost 6 foot tall. Like Saka has really grown, like in terms of like his physicality. And so yeah, he's way like look at this. He doesn't look like this anymore. He doesn't. Like he's grown so much. Now he looks like more like this. And Saka's, yeah, he's almost 6 foot tall now. So with ESR, like he still hasn't grown into that body. And like I think he's having a little bit of like Willick's issues. Like Willick went from like 5'10" to like 6 foot overnight. And so he struggled like with his physicality as well. And I think ESR is struggling with that, and Martinelli is too. So Saka definitely retains his position, and the other two need to kind of fall back a little bit. Saka nutmeg Lazaro. I was at that game and I was like, oh my God, like, because the first half was terrible. This is how long ago it was, you guys. Ozil played in that game. And that game, Nketiah started and Lacazette came off of the bench. That's how long ago it was. But he's beyond them right now. Yo-Yo says this is Saka's team. Yeah, but like if you're 5'10", you're like 1 foot away from or 1 inch away from like actually being 6 foot. So like he's getting there, he's getting close. Like I don't know if he'll hit 6 foot, but like he was like 5'8", I swear, when he got into the team. Akum says ESR has fitness problems, not talking injuries, but overall stamina. Crypto FPL says ESR is 6 foot. He just needs to build his stamina. Yeah, ESR's is kind of this stamina, not being able to, and he also got COVID, and I think it hit him hard. But playing full 90s, staying involved in games, you know, he's 6 foot. He may not get any taller, but he'll fill out a little bit more. And what he is he's physical enough to play on the wings, but he's not physical enough to play in midfield. The players are, no, you guys, wait, hold on. No, I know he's 2 inches. If you're 5'11", you don't say you're 5'11", you say you're 6 foot. You guys, come on. Like, Saka is almost 6 foot tall. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying it. But ESR, he's physical enough to play on the wings, but he's not physical enough to play in midfield. And so if he wants to be able to play central, he needs to bulk up, because that's where the physicality really makes a difference. So, yeah, I think ESR needs a little bit more time. But I also think he's going to have a good season next season. Let's see. You guys are really killing me for the Saka thingy. He's almost 6 foot tall. Jay says, I think that's why Gabby didn't play center forward, because he lacks the strength for now. But yeah, we'll see what happens like with that. We'll see what happens with that. Saksham says, I'm 5'11" and a half foot. Let's see. Blaze says, just do you think the best position for ESR is left wing or midfield? I think right now it's somewhere on the wings, but I do think as he gets older and he fills out and increases his physicality, he'll be a really good 8 on either side, and potentially false 9, because he has the goal scoring in him. And I know like he has a little bit of the Ramsey thing about him, where I think if you even had put Ramsey as a false 9 like back in the day, he probably would have did okay. ESR will play central at some point in his career, but right now he needs to play on the wing, because he's not ready. And then technically, like, I just don't think ESR has the midfielder brain yet, like to know when to drop and be like more defensive, and he gets caught out a lot when he plays in midfield, so he's not quite there yet. Alan says ESR is inside forward. Chris says no way Saka is taller than Mbappe. Saka is at least 5'10". That's what I'm saying. And so that's close to 6 foot in my book, especially when he was so little before. Mikey says 2 strikers incoming, 3 midfielders and 1 defender, another goalkeeper if Leno goes to Germany. Nah, that's not happening. 2 forwards, 1 midfielder, and 1 fullback. That's kind of what I think is going to happen. And we already have a new goalkeeper, so we don't need another goalkeeper. Zach 10 says, who will be the next player of the season? Saka. No, it's going to be an attacker, because it usually is an attacker, and obviously because, like, if your defenders are your players of the season, you did something wrong. So unless it's your goalkeeper because they were like really, really good, I think player of the season will probably end up being somebody new. Like, I think player of the season, because we haven't brought in any forwards, and if they do well, I think the club will and the fans will really get attached to them. So I think it could potentially be somebody new that comes in. So yeah. Odegaard, if he finally steps up in big games, they're saying that he's going to be the new captain for sure. So I don't know how I feel about that. I think I'm pretty okay with it. I don't know if I'm like, yes, but I'm like, okay, like, he'll be captain, but he'll probably be the new captain going into next season. And so we'll see, because he can't go missing in big games, like you said. And I don't think he was really missing against Liverpool or Man City when we played against them. It was more the games towards the end of the season where it was crunch time and he just couldn't get going after international break. He can't do that, so Odegaard needs to step up. And this is another thing that we'll talk about in the coming weeks, is what are our expectations of the players, and we'll break them down. We'll probably break it down into defenders, midfielders, and forwards, and existing players, and kind of talk about what we expect from each of them. The main players, basically. So like Odegaard, what would be your expectations of him? What would be your expectations of Thomas Partey? Stuff like that. And because for me, one of the big things for me is I think Odegaard needs to score at least 10 goals next season. Like, he needs at least 10 goals and 10 assists, respectively. And a lot of that has to do with who we get up top, but equally, he gets in a lot of good positions and doesn't pull the trigger. And so he had 6 goals and maybe 5 assists this past season. Let me look that up. He needs to double that, in my opinion. And what is my opinion anyway? But I wouldn't be surprised if that's what Arteta's telling him. Because what do you say? A number 10 in the Premier League needs to have 15 goals and 15 assists or something. So he had 7 goals and 4 assists. And I think his assist numbers are lower because we didn't have somebody to put away his chances, because his chance creation was really good. But he needs at least 3 or 4 more goals and double the assists next season. I have very high expectations for Martin Odegaard next season. He won't be considered a young player anymore for me. He has enough experience where he should be running all of our games mostly. He should not be going missing. But I love Odegaard so much. So I just have very high expectations for him. Thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate that. Let's see. St. Vincent says, I think Odie and Saka faded because they got marked out of the game without Partey giving them the ball. That could be some of it as well. We just lacked that link, with not having Thomas Partey at the base and being able to get past that first line of pressing. And this shouldn't be an issue next season, because we should have another center midfielder with some more creativity and Yuri Tielemans. We should have other attacking players that they have to mark. So that shouldn't be a problem. So yeah, Seksham says, Odegaard is scared to shoot. He's good technique-wise, just needs confidence. Yeah, and like if you're the captain next season, and this is what this is all coming from, the captain has to lead not only with what he's saying, but by example. And so Odegaard can't be somebody that shows up against Watford and plays amazing against Watford, and then at the end of the season, when it's crunch time, become a ghost. And some of that does have to do with the players around him, but some of it just has to do with him not stepping up and him going missing. And I was really disappointed in the way that he performed against Spurs. But in particular, like Newcastle. Like I just don't think that there was a lot from him. And so, yeah, Odegaard is one of the players that I'm looking at to really take a huge step up next season. But let's go ahead and end it there. We just kind of talked about whatever because there's not a lot to talk about. But you guys know I'll always come on here and put your comments up and give you guys my opinion and let you guys put yours out there. Tomorrow the window opens and we'll go fully into what our predictions of the window is going to be. Hopefully there'll be some new news out there. We'll see what happens. Good news, hopefully. And yeah, so like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you guys so much. Anike, Yo-Yo, Keenan, Saksham, who else is in here? Blaze, Nashville. So many of you guys that are in here all the time. Diallo, Hakum, Tony, George. Some of you guys are in here all the time, and I really do appreciate that. It means a lot to me that you guys spend time. Keenan, so thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it, and I will talk to you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.